Hey guys, this is Grant Coombs III, aka Balbomb, coming to you for another video from CardRunners.com. In this video, we're going to take a look at some interesting hands that I've had through the first half of the month here. There's going to be a nice mix of some interesting hands that I was really struggling with, some hands that I should have played better and hopefully you can learn something from, and then finally a mix of maybe a few lines that you haven't thought of or haven't used in your game in a little while. So we're going to take a look at all of those, I think. So let's begin here. Really standard 3-bet versus a 28-25 who's opening 14% here. I think my hand just plays a little bit too well not to be 3-betting, and almost always I'm going to have an aggressive enough dynamic that I can either get the money in here or potentially just call a 4-bet if he is the sort of player that's going to be having a completely polarized range. I don't mind at all just simply calling the 4-bet. But when I make it on the slightly smaller side here, I'm probably going to be calling the 4-bet more often than I am going to be just getting the money in. He calls, and that's a little bit unpredictable for him just because he is folding to 86% of 3-bets. So I do think that he probably has a pretty defined range of something like ace, queen, jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, king, queen suited, king, jack suited. That's just about it. Maybe queens, maybe. Also, I will note that this is the first time I've seen this player, and he was playing on several tables, and pretty much throughout the session, he was winning just about every hand. So I was not able to see much showdown from him. He was continually taking down pots, both against me and the rest of the players at the table. So I honestly didn't have an amazing feel for how he's playing his hands. Now, this is actually sort of an interesting flop because obviously there's almost always going to be enough equity to get the money in, and we have at least 7 outs twice almost all the time, and that's really would be a little bit unlucky if that's all we had. Obviously, the problem here becomes, though, that pocket 10s and pocket 9s are a really large portion of his get-it-in range. I was really close between checking back and betting. Don't mind either play, to be honest with you. I just thought that if I check back here, my hand is pretty face up, and I'm really relying on just purely my equity, where I think that I can get him off certain hands like jacks or queens later on in the hand if I do bet this straight. I see bet a pretty standard amount, just a little bit over half pot, because we are a little bit deep and I want to make it so we can shove river. And he pretty quickly check raises me to 55. Obviously at this point I'm not going to be folding, but I do think that getting the money in here on the flop is a pretty big mistake because we're either going to be folding out as complete air. Even a hand like queen jack's probably going to be folding if we shove here. Unless it's obviously like queen jack of diamonds, and even then we're not a huge favorite there. And additionally, he's just going to be getting it in with 10s and 9s all the time, so a situation where I think just calling is a pretty obvious play. The turn's a king, and this is really where the hand I think gets rather interesting, because we do remember, if we went back to our pre-flop ranges, he still could have a hand like king jack, king queen that was check raise bluffing the flop. He could also have queen jack that was bluffing with equity. Obviously, the nutted hands in his range now of 10s, 9s, and queen jack still apply. And maybe even if he went wild with a hand such as ace queen with a bluff or pocket 8s with a bluff, that this is going to be a really good card for him to continue on. Again, I think there's really very little option here but just a call. I will note to you that if he shoves river here, I was going to fold this river. As you can see, I think an ace comes that does a couple things. First of all, if he is bluffing on the flop, then these are just really good cards to continue with on the turn in the river if he is continuing a bluff. So if you just break down his range to value and bluffs, I think that both situations are going to continue, particularly on this card. Now, if the river is an offsuit deuce or something like that, I think that drastically takes away from how many times he's going to be calling, particularly because I can still... I think I actually probably have more queen jacks in my range than he does. And I definitely have pocket kings and pocket aces in my range as well here. So my range is pretty well protected. I don't really anticipate him shoving a hand like, I don't know, if the river was an offsuit deuce, if he had something like pocket 8s or ace queen, I really don't anticipate him going for a 3 straight bluff all that often. But what this does is, one, it cements my hand that now at least I can beat a hand such as 10-9. I can at least beat a hand such as King 10 that might make a weird play. I can definitely beat King Jack or King Queen that might think, well, I only have $109 remaining into a pot that's really big at this point of $295. So there also might be some confusion of what to do with King Jack or King Queen here. And also the slight chance that, same sort of idea, that he really doesn't know what to do with Ace Queen, so he's just going to shove it and hope that I call with worse here. All in all, I think I get a little bit lucky with the board run out because I'm not sure if he's going to be shoving river with Ace Queen or not. At the same time, I do think that I allowed his range to stay as wide as possible during this hand, and that makes it key because I keep in as many bluffs as possible. I think if someone would make a good argument about just checking back the flop, I could definitely listen to that and agree with it quite a bit, particularly against a player that I don't know a ton about. But throughout his hands, he was being aggressive, and I didn't see him get to showdown. So I think that the relative strength of my hand is just too much here to pass up.